No one has the right to tie a helpless person to a chair and leave them to face the harsh cold of a winter night. Understand that such behavior is wrong and unjustifiable. The restraints used in this case were not only illegal but also a manifestation of cruelty. Yet, in a place supposed to be a warm haven for lonely elderly people, a shocking crime took place. And the truth behind the doors of that house was a dark, secretive shadow that became a source of fear and haunting for many unfortunate souls there. On a freezing night in early November 2022 in the town of Wildwood, Sumter County, Florida, an emergency call to 911 shattered the quiet of a residential neighborhood. The caller, an anonymous neighbor, reported hearing faint moans from the backyard of a nearby house. Accompanied by an unusual sight, a shadowy figure sitting motionless in the dark. This call, made around 9 p.m., marked the beginning of one of the most shocking cases in Wildwood. When the Wildwood Police Department's patrol team arrived at the scene, a single-story house in a suburban area, it was known as Beyond Expectations, a care facility for the elderly and disabled. But upon arrival, they discovered a horrifying scene. A woman, later identified as Nichole Baker, was tightly bound to a metal chair in the backyard. Left outside in temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, Nichole, severely disabled both physically and mentally, could not speak, move, or protect herself. She was entirely dependent on the caregivers at the facility to meet her basic needs. Nichole's condition when found was deeply alarming. She was dressed in thin clothing, her body trembling from the cold, with clear signs of exhaustion, pale skin, chapped lips, and bruises around her wrists and ankles from the restraints. The nylon ropes tightly binding her hands and feet to the chair were evidence of a cruel act. The police immediately cut the ropes, wrapped her in a warm blanket, and called an ambulance to rush her to Wildwood Regional Medical Center. However, just a few days later, around November 7, 2022, the hospital reported that Nichole Baker had passed away under mysterious circumstances. Her death transformed the case from one of severe abuse into a criminal investigation into a suspicious death. The Wildwood Police Department's criminal investigation team, led by Chief Detective Michael Reynolds, was tasked with uncovering the truth. The case was not only shocking due to its cruelty, but also because of unanswered questions. Who tied up Nichole? Why was she treated this way? And what led to her death? The investigation began at the scene in the backyard of the house. The area was cordoned off for forensic technicians to collect evidence. The metal chair, nylon ropes, and a torn blanket nearby were placed in evidence bags. Investigators photographed the entire area. Noting signs of neglect, the backyard was overgrown with weeds, littered with trash, and showed no signs of the medical support equipment necessary for someone with Nichole's disabilities. Through examination of documents and records at the house, the police confirmed the victim was Nichole Baker, a 27-year-old woman. Nichole had severe developmental and physical disabilities since childhood, rendering her unable to care for herself. She lived at the house under the care of guardians, with Desiree, a middle-aged woman, designated by the state of Florida as her primary caregiver. Desiree received monthly stipends to ensure Nichole's health and safety. Besides Desiree, the house was home to others, including a man believed to be Desiree's boyfriend, Thoris, and a minor, possibly Desiree's child. Their roles in the incident were unclear, but all were slated for questioning to clarify Nichole's living conditions. In the initial hours, police rushed Nichole to the hospital for urgent medical evaluation. Doctors noted severe malnutrition, dehydration, and signs of hypothermia. Additionally, she had bruises and abrasions consistent with prolonged restraint. Despite medical care, Nichole's condition was too frail, and she passed away days later, prompting investigators to shift focus to determining the cause of death. Detective Reynolds and the investigative team questioned Desiree at the scene on the night Nichole was found. Desiree claimed she tied Nichole to the chair in the backyard because she became agitated and needed to be controlled. She stated that she tied Nichole to the chair while she brought other patients inside and put them to bed, claiming Nichole was only outside for about 30 minutes. According to Desiree, Nichole sometimes exhibited challenging behaviors, such as screaming or attempting to move, and tying her was to protect her from self-harm. Desiree insisted she only intended to leave Nichole outside briefly and was unaware of the low temperature or her dangerous condition. However, Desiree's account was riddled with inconsistencies. When asked about the frequency and reasons for restraining Nichole, Desiree became evasive, vaguely stating it was occasional without providing further details. Her inconsistent and unconvincing statements led investigators to suspect she was hiding something. Meanwhile, police interviewed neighbors to learn more about Nichole's living situation. One neighbor, Linda Carter, reported seeing Nichole sitting in the backyard for extended periods, sometimes all day, but didn't report it. Unaware of her disabilities, another neighbor revealed frequent arguments emanating from the house, and Nichole was rarely seen in the neighborhood's common areas. These accounts supported the hypothesis that Nichole had been neglected for an extended period, and tying her in the backyard was not an isolated incident. Investigators also contacted Sumter County's welfare agency to review Nichole's care records. They discovered Desiree had been approved as her caregiver since 2017 following the death of Nichole's biological mother. However, records showed prior reports from social workers noting Desiree's failure to provide sufficient updates on Nichole's condition during routine checks. While these reports didn't lead to specific actions, they heightened suspicions that the welfare agency may have overlooked warning signs. Nichole Baker's death marked a turning point in the case, compelling investigators to determine whether it resulted from neglect, intentional actions, or another factor. Nichole's body was sent to the Sumter County Medical Examiner's office for an autopsy. The forensic pathologist was tasked with analyzing the cause and manner of death. Nichole showed signs of severe malnutrition, weighing only about 91 pounds at the time of her death, far below a healthy range. She was also dehydrated, with blood tests indicating prolonged nutritional deficiencies. Bruises and abrasions on her wrists, ankles, and other areas were consistent with prolonged restraint by ropes. Additionally, she exhibited signs of hypothermia, suggesting her body had endured low temperatures for hours before rescue. There were no fatal injuries, such as stab wounds, strangulation, or head trauma. The pathologist hypothesized that death could have resulted from multiple organ failure, triggered by a combination of hypothermia, malnutrition, and physical stress from being restrained. Another possibility was an underlying condition, such as a cardiovascular disorder or infection, exacerbated by neglect. Toxicology tests were conducted to check for the presence of drugs. If the death was determined to be due to neglect, Desiree could face charges like abuse of a vulnerable person or manslaughter. If evidence pointed to intentional acts, such as administering sedatives or deliberate starvation, charges could escalate to second-degree murder. Investigators focused on gathering more evidence from the scene and those involved to clarify the circumstances of Nichole's death. After extensive testing, the results confirmed that the victim had been exposed to high levels of drug toxicity, meaning she had been given excessive amounts of medication, leading to overdose, exhaustion, and death exacerbated by neglect. With Desiree as the primary suspect, investigators expanded their scope to build a robust case. They divided the investigation into three main prongs: forensic analysis, additional interrogations, and witness searches. Samples from the scene, including the rope, chair, and Nichole's clothing, were sent to Florida's State Forensic Laboratory. The rope bore fingerprints identified as Desiree's, strengthening her link to the act of restraining Nichole. Investigators also found an unlabeled bottle of sedatives in the house, containing a benzodiazepine commonly used to induce drowsiness. While there was no direct evidence that this drug was administered to Nichole, its presence raised suspicions that Desiree may have used medication to control Nichole's behavior. During a second court-ordered search of the house, police uncovered notable items. A notebook detailing expenses showed Desiree used Nichole's stipend for personal purposes, and unused. Outdated medical supplies indicated Nichole received inadequate care. Investigators also examined Desiree's phone, finding Google searches like how to handle an agitated disabled person and consequences of caregiver neglect. While not direct evidence, these searches suggested Desiree was aware of her responsibilities and may have deliberately ignored them. Desiree was summoned for formal questioning at the police station. In a lengthy interrogation, she stuck to her story that tying Nichole was to protect her. However, when confronted with evidence of malnutrition and bruising, Desiree admitted to skipping Nichole's meals regularly because she was too busy. She also acknowledged tying Nichole multiple times before, but insisted she meant no harm. When asked about the sedative bottle, Desiree claimed it was her personal medication, unrelated to Nichole, based on the evidence. Desiree was identified as the primary suspect responsible for Nichole's abuse and death. Investigators believe Desiree had neglected Nichole for an extended period, leading to malnutrition and frailty, and that tying her in the backyard was the culmination of this abuse. While there was no direct evidence Desiree intended to kill Nichole, her indifference to Nichole's life was sufficient for serious charges. After 4 weeks of investigation, in late November 2022, the Wildwood Police Department issued an arrest warrant for Desiree on charges of abuse of a vulnerable person and neglect resulting in death. Desiree was arrested at her home without resistance and taken to the Sumter County Detention Center. She was held without bail due to the severity of the case. In post-arrest interrogations, Desiree admitted to not providing adequate food or medical care to Nichole for months. She stated she felt overwhelmed by her responsibilities and had used ropes to restrain Nichole multiple times to control her and others. Desiree claimed she didn't intend to kill Nichole, but admitted to leaving her in the backyard overnight because she forgot to bring her inside. Regarding the stipend, Desiree confessed to using a significant portion for personal expenses, such as shopping and debt repayment, instead of Nichole's care. Prosecutors from the Sumter County State Attorney's Office argued that Desiree's prolonged neglect and deliberate exposure of Nichole to dangerous conditions demonstrated a reckless disregard for her life, sufficient for a manslaughter charge. They also considered upgrading the charges if further tests revealed chemical interference or other intentional acts. The Nichole Baker case left profound impacts on the Wildwood community and Florida's disability care system. At the time of writing, Desiree Doe's case remains in the litigation phase, with preliminary hearings scheduled for 2023. If convicted, Desiree could face up to 15 years in prison for abuse and 7 years for manslaughter, depending on the court's ruling. The Nichole Baker case is a heartbreaking tragedy that exposed significant flaws in the disability care system. From a disabled woman tied up in a backyard to her mysterious death, the case raised critical questions about caregiver accountability, the role of welfare agencies, and community awareness. Despite numerous challenges, the investigation underscores the need for better protection for society's most vulnerable. This case serves as a stark reminder of that responsibility. We hope justice will be served for Nichole and that the lessons from this case will lead to positive changes, preventing similar tragedies in the future. That concludes today's case. Thank you for following along, and we hope you found it engaging. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on the latest cases. See you next time.